matter will be dismissed without prejudice. The matter will be dismissed without prejudice. The matter will be dismissed without prejudice. Thank you.
America, Boston is in the middle of what legal experts are calling a constitutional crisis that's forcing courts to dismiss hundreds of criminal cases, including assaults on pregnant women, attacks on police officers, and gun offenses. Public defenders stopped taking new cases over a pay dispute, and now violent criminals are walking free because defendants can't get lawyers. But here's what's really insane. While this legal disaster unfolds and homicides nearly double from 12 to 23 in the same time frame, Mayor Michelle Wu is still claiming Boston is the safest city in the country. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This is what happens when progressive leadership prioritizes ideology over public safety and accountability. Let me explain what's happening in Massachusetts courts right now. Bar advocates, public defenders who represent people who can't afford lawyers, have stopped taking new cases because they say the state doesn't pay them enough. They get paid $65 an hour, but after overhead and expenses, they claim it's closer to $20 an hour.
A constitutional crisis. That is what some say is playing out right now in courtrooms all across the Commonwealth, and it could soon hit another level with suspects charged with crimes being set free.
Because of this work stoppage that started back in May, hundreds of defendants across Massachusetts don't have lawyers. As of a few Sundays ago, Middlesex had at least 587 defendants without representation. In Suffolk County, which includes Boston, 603 defendants don't have lawyers. The Supreme Court Judicial Court had to institute what's called the Lavallee Protocol, which mandates that any defendant without counsel would be released within 7 days. And if you're held for 45 days without an attorney, their case gets dismissed. Think about what this means. People charged with serious violent crimes are being released or having their cases thrown out, not because they're innocent, but because there's not enough public defenders.
The Lavallee Protocol mandates that defendants who do not have attorneys within 45 days are to have the cases against them dismissed without prejudice.
Legal experts are calling this a constitutional crisis because the Sixth Amendment guarantees the rights to counsel. But when you can't provide lawyers, you have to choose between violating defendants' constitutional rights or releasing them. The court chose to release them, and now violent criminals are walking free. The consequences of this crisis are now playing out in courtrooms across Massachusetts. In one day alone, 145 cases were dismissed in Suffolk County, and these weren't minor offenses. We're talking about violent crimes and real victims. Among the charges dismissed, assault and battery, gun offenses, vandalism, drunk driving, and violent abuse prevention orders. In one case, prosecutors described
defendant dragged the victim out of his car, punched her multiple times in the face, causing severe noticeable injuries by the police officer.
More than 100 criminal cases were dismissed at Boston Municipal Court in a special hearing. Chief Justice Trace Lee Lyons presided over these hearings, dismissing case after case after case because the Committee of Public Counsel Service had been unable to find defense counsel.
The action taken as public defenders' work stoppage and a dispute over wages takes a dramatic turn.
This case will be dismissed without prejudice.
More cases dismissed included several involving assault on police officers, domestic violence assaults, and the use of dangerous weapons. Think about what this means for victims. They went through the trauma of being attacked. They cooperated with police. They were waiting for justice. And now their case is just thrown out because the state couldn't adequately pay public defenders. Prosecutors are absolutely furious about what's happening, and they should be. A Suffolk County DA spokesperson called it an extremely difficult day for prosecutors, the police, and victim advocates, adding it was especially a hard day for victims who are now facing, at best, significant delays in seeing defendants brought to justice. Defense attorney Phil Tracy, who's not a prosecutor but understands the system, warned about what's coming.
People are going to get hurt, wives, robberies are going to take place by guys who were already in jail and now they're out.
The Suffolk DA office issued a statement saying the case is dismissed today, with many more expecting in the coming days and weeks present a clear and continuing threat to public safety. But despite these warnings, the state legislator and Governor Healy failed to adequately address the pay dispute that caused this crisis in the first place. Here's what makes this even more infuriating. The Massachusetts legislator had the opportunity to prevent this crisis, but chose not to. They passed a budget just a few weeks ago that did not include the pay raises on public defenders that they were demanding.
I know that what I put forward and what the legislature did was the largest increase for bar advocates.
The governor again told us today that the bar advocates are back at work. But the nearly 150 dismissals our cameras captured in court paint a very different picture.
Governor Healey claimed that what she put forward and what the legislation did is the largest increase for bar advocates. But clearly it wasn't enough to get them back to work, which means it was an inadequate response to the crisis that was already unfolding. Bar advocates work as independent contractors in Massachusetts. They get paid $65 an hour, which sounds reasonable until you realize that they have to pay for their own overhead, own benefits, own retirement. After expenses, they claim closer to $20 an hour for highly skilled legal work. Neighboring states pay their public defenders twice as much. So Massachusetts is trying to provide constitutional required legal representation on the cheap. And now they're paying the price with hundreds of cases being dismissed and violent criminals walking free.
The single justice who heard the Lavallee petition had an obligation to weigh the risk of public safety against violating individuals' right to counsel. And in weighing those two factors against one another, she chose to implement the Lavallee Protocol.
Now let me connect this legal crisis to what's actually happening on Boston streets, because this is a perfect storm of progressive policy failures. While hundreds of criminal cases are being dismissed, violent crime in Boston is getting absolutely worse. There have been 23 homicides in Boston so far this year. That's compared to 12 from the previous year in the same time frame. That's not a small increase. That's homicides nearly doubling year over year under Mayor Wu's leadership. And it's not just homicides. About 3 months ago, Boston had one of the most violent nights in recent memory.
4 different reports of people shot just in Dorchester and 2 reports of stabbings. One as recently as 10:19 this morning on Dacia Street. Our camera capturing a suspect's arrest in that stabbing.
So you have violent crime increasing, homicides nearly doubling, and now hundreds of criminal cases being dismissed because of a constitutional crisis that the state failed to present. This is what happens when progressive politics prioritize everything except public safety and accountability. But here's what really drives this point home. Boston residents are telling reporters that they don't feel safe at all, despite what Mayor Wu keeps claiming. When reporters ask residents about Wu's claim that Boston is the safest city in America, the responses are absolutely devastating.
Mayor Wu is always saying we're the safest major city in America.
Not at all.
Tell me why you don't think so.
There's no accountability. No one's held accountable for their actions. You can't even go in a store without seeing someone shoplift in front of you. There's kids walking around with guns that are getting arrested, and they're put back on the street the next day.
That is the real story. Not just that crime is happening, but there are no consequences. Criminals are being arrested and released immediately, creating a revolving door justice system. And now, with hundreds of cases being dismissed, that revolving door is spinning faster and faster. Here's what another resident said.
Residents here aren't safe that live in high crime areas such as down the street by the church.
But when confronted with these concerns, Mayor Wu Fang-Chu doubles down on her narrative. Here's what she told reporters.
When I say we're the safest major city in the country, it is never to say that our work is done. We will not be satisfied in Boston until we have ended violence, period.
That sounds nice, but it's completely disconnected from reality. You can't claim your city is the safest in America when homicides are nearly doubling, when residents say there's no accountability, and hundreds of violent criminal cases are being dismissed because of a crisis your state government failed to prevent. Let me tell you why crime is up and accountability is down in Boston. It's because progressive leadership prioritizes ideology over results, narratives over reality, and political correctness over public safety. We've covered many cases on this channel about Boston's massive drug and homeless problem. The city has serious issues that require serious solutions, but instead of addressing root causes, addiction, crime, lack of consequences for criminal behavior, progressive mayors focusing on maintaining a narrative that everything is fine. The Massachusetts legislation had the opportunity to prevent this constitutional crisis by adequately funding public defenders. They chose not to. Governor Healey claims they provided the largest largest increase for bar advocates, but it clearly wasn't enough. So now violent criminals walk free while victims are denied justice. This is the same pattern we see in every progressive-run city. Prioritize everything except for public safety, excuse criminal behavior, create systems without accountability, then act surprised when crime increases and residents don't feel safe. To be fair to Mayor Wu Fang-Chu, she's at least doing a better job than Mayor Brandon Mohawk Johnson in Chicago. Chicago is an absolute disaster under Johnson's leadership, and crime is completely out of control, and the city's finances are in shambles. So Wu isn't the worst progressive mayor in America. She's just not that good. The real test will be how Wu Fang-Chu stacks up against newly elected mayors in other major cities. New York just elected Zohran Mamdani, a Democrat socialist who makes AOC look moderate. Seattle elected a new mayor who will have to deal with the city's ongoing crime and homelessness crisis. We'll see over the next year whether these progressive mayors can actually govern or whether they'll continue to prioritize ideology over results. America, this wasn't incompetence. This was a business model. Boston's progressive leadership has created a system where criminals face no real consequences, where violent offenders are released immediately, where hundreds of cases are dismissed because the state won't adequately fund public defenders. Progressive policies that prioritize ideology over public safety, that excuse criminal behavior, that creates a revolving door justice system where victims get forgotten and criminals feel entitled. Homicides in Boston have nearly doubled from 12 to 23 in the same time frame. Residents say there's no accountability. Kids with guns are back on the streets the next day, and now 145 cases dismissed in a single day, with hundreds more expected in the coming weeks. Boston deserves better than progressive mayors who claim their cities are safe while homicides double and violent criminals walk free because of a crisis their government failed to prevent. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.